Welcome to my YouTube channel. My name is Gracious Muwowo, and today we'll be talking about the history of photography and videography. So, the history of cameras is something that piques a lot of people's minds. In the late 1500s, there was a certain man named Abu Ali Hassan. This man is actually considered to be the father of optics and is credited with the invention of the first pinhole camera called camera obscura. This contraption was a light-proof box with a small hole on one side for light to enter and strike a reflection surface to project invented but colorful or colored images. So this camera was used originally to observe solar events and in drawing architecture. In 1830s, Joseph Lip used a portable camera obscura to expose a pewter plate coated with bitumen to light. It's the first recorded image that did not fade quickly. More experiments were made, now on the path that was already set. We have the daguerreotypes, the immersion plates, and the wet plates that were developed almost simultaneously in the middle to late 1800s. So, Knipe collaborated with Louis Daguerre, making a daguerreotype a forerunner of modern film. The daguerreotype was a plate coated with silver and exposed to iodine vapor before it was exposed to light to create an image. So the early types had to be exposed to light for up to 15 minutes and were very popular until they got replaced in the late 1850s by immersion plates. Henry Ford made the color type camera in 1840, the world's first negative. A quick tip: I'm sure you must wonder how the name photograph came to be. So that credit is given to a man named Sir John. Sir John is credited to have been the man who came up with the name photography, which was originally in Greek photos, graphe, and by photo he meant light, graphe means drawing. So we continue. In the late 1850s, immersion plates were introduced, and this gained popularity quickly because they required only a few seconds to be exposed to light, which made them so much suited for portraits. And billows were added to cameras to help with focusing. The two common types of immersions were ambrotypes and tint types. So for ambrotypes, these used a glass plate instead of the copper plate of the daguerreotype, while the tints used a tint plate. Huge success, and by that I mean huge success, hit photography in the 1870s when Richard Maddox improved on a previous invention to make dry gelatin plates. These plates were equal to the immersion plates in terms of speed and quality, yet the gelatin plates could be stored and developed at a much later time when needed, and also allowed for smaller cameras to be invented that could be handheld. Soon after, camera with the marketing shutter was introduced rather, and then it was developed. Back in the early days, cameras were very, very expensive, and for one to own them, you had to be very, very rich. But in the 1880s, we see a man named George Eastman, the founder of Kodak. He introduced cameras to the regular people, and by then cameras were starting to be shaped, or were starting to look more like the cameras we're used to seeing now. Yet again, cameras did not have any focusing adjustments, so they only had the capacity to shoot 100 photos at a time, and after the film was over, the person had to take the camera back to the factory so that it can be developed, the photos can be developed. 1930, we see Oscar Bannock begin to research the possibility of inventing a smaller camera that anyone could use, the Leica camera, which began to be commercialized after the World War I. In the early 40s, the 35mm film had become popular and cheap enough for the average person to afford. And in 1948, Polaroid introduced its Model 95, which had the capacity to take and develop in less than 1 minute. And in the 1950s, we see a camera being introduced known as Asahi, which we now know as Pentax, and Nikon, which introduced its Nikon F camera. These were both SLR type cameras. So the SLR style cameras became camera of choice for over 30 years, where improvements were being made all throughout. Compact cameras, which were capable of making image control decisions on their own, came to existence in the late 1970s and early 1980s. These point and shoot cameras calculated shutter speed, aperture, and focus, leaving photographers free to concentrate on composition. And in 1988, the first digital camera was created, but never sold to the public until 1991, when Kodak released the Kodak DCS, which was their first in a long line of digital cameras. Other manufacturing companies followed suit quickly, with Canon, Nikon, Pentax offering developed digital SLR and DSLR cameras. In the late 1990s and the 2000s, digital videos became increasingly dominant, with the introduction of DVDs, high-definition videos, and the increase of the internet, which paved the way for online video sharing and streaming. And in 2004, everything took a turn when Epson, in partnership with Cousin, introduced the first true mirrorless camera, the RD1. So that is the history of cameras and videographers as you know it. Thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed as much as I did doing this research. And if you did and you are interested in getting to know more about things like that, you can subscribe so that you get to see more of my content. Subscribe so that you get to see more of my content. Like, share, and comment if there's anything that I left out, or if there's any topic that you want me to cover up next. Once again, thank you very much for reaching to the end with me. I hope to see you next time.